Get down on your knees and beg like a dog if you want these scraps." This is what hotel staff at a 5-star luxury hotel told a man who looked homeless and hungry. They threw food on the marble floor of their expensive lobby and laughed while recording him with their phones. The man got down and started picking up the scraps while they made cruel jokes about him. What these hotel employees didn't know was that this homeless man owned the entire hotel chain. He was the CEO who had built this luxury empire from nothing. After watching his staff treat him like an animal for hours, he pulled out his phone and made one simple call. Within minutes, their careers were destroyed. Their jobs were gone. Their reputations were ruined forever. Some faced legal action that would follow them for years. The phone call that changed everything lasted only 30 seconds, but its effects were absolutely devastating. Before we dive into this incredible story, let us know which country you're watching from. Hit that like button if you're ready to hear how one phone call brought down an entire hotel staff. It is the story of Alexander Crown, the 60-year-old owner of Crown Luxury Hotels. His company owned 25 of the most expensive hotels around the world. Each hotel was known for perfect service, beautiful rooms, and treating every guest like royalty. Rich and famous people stayed at Crown hotels because they knew they would get the best treatment money could buy. But Alexander was getting very worried reports from his hotels. Guests were complaining about rude staff. Online reviews were getting worse every month. Some customers said they were treated badly because of how they looked or where they came from. The most shocking complaints came from his flagship hotel in the city center, the Crown Palace Hotel. This hotel was supposed to be the crown jewel of his empire. It had marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and rooms that cost more per night than most people made in a month. But the complaints about staff behavior were getting more serious every week. Alexander realized that sitting in his office reading reports wouldn't show him what was really happening. He needed to see for himself how his staff treated people when they thought no one important was watching. He decided to do something that would either save his company's reputation or expose the ugly truth about what it had become. Alexander's plan was dangerous but necessary. He would disguise himself as a homeless man and visit his own hotel to see how the staff treated someone they considered worthless. This wasn't going to be a normal inspection where everyone acted perfectly because they knew the boss was coming. He spent weeks preparing for this undercover mission. Alexander stopped shaving and cutting his hair. He bought the oldest, dirtiest clothes he could find from charity shops. He learned to change the way he walked and talked so no one would recognize him. Most importantly, he prepared himself mentally for the worst treatment possible. Alexander chose the Crown Palace Hotel for his test. This was his most expensive property, where a single night cost more than many people's monthly rent. If his staff were going to show their true character anywhere, it would be in this environment where they dealt with extremely wealthy people every day. The plan was simple, but risky. He would approach the hotel as a desperate homeless man asking for work or food. He would accept whatever treatment he received and document every policy violation and act of cruelty. He would push the situation to its limits to see just how far his staff would go. Alexander had no idea that his simple plan would reveal such shocking cruelty that it would end with multiple people losing their careers and facing legal consequences. The phone call he would eventually make would destroy lives and change his company forever. Exactly at 5 p.m., Alexander approached the Crown Palace Hotel looking nothing like the successful businessman everyone knew. His clothes were torn and dirty. His hair was long and messy. His beard was unkempt, and he smelled like someone who had been living on the streets for months. The Crown Palace Hotel was magnificent. Its entrance had huge marble columns, gold decorations, and doormen in expensive uniforms. Rich people in designer clothes walked in and out, while luxury cars dropped off important guests. The contrast between Alexander's appearance and this environment was shocking. Alexander walked up to the main entrance where two doormen immediately blocked his path. "Hey, you can't come in here," said the first doorman, looking at Alexander with disgust. This is a private hotel for paying guests only. Please, sir, Alexander said in a weak voice, I'm very hungry. I was wondering if I could work for some food, maybe wash dishes or clean something. The second doorman laughed mockingly. Look at yourself. You think we would let someone like you work in a five-star hotel? You're making our entrance look bad just by standing here. But Alexander didn't give up. I'm willing to do any job, no matter how hard. I just need something to eat. I haven't had food in 2 days. The doormen looked at each other and seemed to get an idea. Wait here, the first one said with a mean smile. Let me get the manager. Maybe he'll find this entertaining. Alexander stood outside the beautiful hotel entrance, watching wealthy guests walk past him like he was invisible. Some looked at him with pity, others with disgust, but none offered help. He was beginning to understand how society treated people who looked poor and desperate. Within a few minutes, Marcus Sterling, the hotel manager, came outside. Marcus was a well-dressed man in his 40s who clearly took pride in running such an expensive establishment. When he saw Alexander, his reaction was immediate and cruel. Marcus looked at Alexander from head to toe with complete disgust. So, you're the homeless man who thinks he can work at the Crown Palace Hotel? He said loudly so other people could hear. Do you have any idea what kind of establishment this is? Yes, sir. I know it's a very nice hotel, Alexander replied humbly. I just thought maybe I could help in the kitchen or clean bathrooms. I'm not asking for money, just some food. Marcus laughed in a very mean way. Food? You want food from our kitchen? Our kitchen serves meals that cost more than you probably see in a year. He walked around Alexander like he was examining a piece of garbage. But you know what? I'm feeling generous today. I might have a way you can earn some scraps. The hotel manager called several staff members to come outside. Front desk clerks, concierge staff, and security guards gathered around to see what was happening. Marcus clearly enjoyed having an audience for what he was about to do. Listen carefully, Marcus said to Alexander. If you really want food from our hotel, you're going to have to work for it in a special way. You see, we have very high standards here. We can't just give food away to anyone who asks. Alexander nodded, willing to do whatever was necessary to continue his investigation. Here's what you're going to do, Marcus continued with a cruel smile. You're going to get down on your hands and knees, right here on our marble floor, and you're going to beg like a dog. If you can convince me that you really deserve our leftover scraps, maybe I'll consider giving you something. The other staff members started laughing. Some pulled out their phones to record what they thought would be hilarious entertainment. Alexander couldn't believe what he was hearing. This was his own hotel, and his manager was asking him to degrade himself for amusement. I don't understand, Alexander said, pretending to be confused. It's simple, Marcus said, enjoying the power he had over someone he thought was helpless. Get on your knees, put your hands together, and beg like the dog you are. Bark if you have to. Show us how badly you want our food. Have you ever witnessed someone being treated this cruelly? What would you do if you saw this happening to someone? Let us know in the comments below. Alexander realized this was exactly the kind of behavior he needed to document, no matter how painful it was to experience. With great difficulty and shame, Alexander slowly got down on his knees on the cold marble floor of the hotel entrance. The contrast was shocking. A man kneeling like a beggar in front of one of the world's most luxurious hotels. That's it, Marcus said with excitement. Now put your hands together and beg properly. Tell us why you deserve our leftover food. Alexander put his hands together and said in a weak voice, Please, I'm very hungry. I would be grateful for any food you could spare. The hotel staff burst into laughter. Several employees were recording everything on their phones, treating this humiliation like entertainment. This is going to be great for social media, one front desk clerk said to another. But Marcus wasn't satisfied yet. That's not good enough, he said. I want you to bark like a dog. Show us you understand your place. Alexander felt sick to his stomach, but he knew he had to continue documenting this terrible behavior. He made a few quiet barking sounds, feeling more humiliated than he had ever felt in his life. Louder, Marcus demanded. I can't hear you. How badly do you want this food? The crowd of staff members was growing as more employees came to watch the show. Some were laughing and encouraging Marcus to make it worse, but Alexander noticed that a few employees looked uncomfortable with what they were seeing. Sarah, a young housekeeper, looked away because she couldn't watch. An older security guard named Robert seemed ashamed of what his colleagues were doing. These people still had their humanity, but they were too scared to speak up against their manager. Marcus went into the hotel and came back with a plate of leftover bread and soup. But instead of handing it to Alexander, he dumped it on the marble floor in front of him. "There's your food," Marcus said with a cruel laugh. "Now you can eat it like the dog you are. Pick it up with your mouth if you want it so badly." Alexander stared at the food scattered on the expensive marble floor. Wealthy hotel guests walked past, some stopping to stare at the shocking scene. He realized this wasn't just about him anymore. This was about how his staff treated any vulnerable person who came to their hotel. The other employees continued filming and laughing, completely unaware that they were documenting evidence that would destroy their careers. Alexander picked up small pieces of bread from the floor, knowing that every second of this humiliation was being recorded not just by cruel staff, but by his own memory for the changes he would make. What happened next was even worse than Alexander could have imagined. Marcus seemed to get more excited by the power he had over someone he thought was helpless. "You know what?" Marcus said to the other employees. "Let's make this more interesting. I bet this guy will do anything for food. Who wants to place bets on what we can make him do next?" Several staff members started making bets with real money. "I bet $10 he'll roll over like a dog," said one front desk clerk. "I bet 20 he'll crawl around the lobby on his hands and knees," said another. Alexander couldn't believe that his own employees were gambling on human suffering. This wasn't just poor customer service, this was completely inhuman behavior. Marcus had another cruel idea. "Let's see how desperate he really is," he said. "I want you to crawl into our lobby and beg every guest you see. Tell them you're hungry and ask them for money. If you can collect $50, I'll give you a real meal." This demand was designed to humiliate Alexander even more while also disturbing the hotel's wealthy guests. Marcus was willing to ruin his customers' experience just to torture someone he thought was powerless. Alexander crawled into the beautiful hotel lobby on his hands and knees. The marble floors were cold and hard. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above him while he was forced to move like an animal. Wealthy guests in expensive clothes stared in shock and disgust. "Excuse me," Alexander said to a well-dressed woman. "I'm very hungry. Could you spare some money for food?" The woman looked horrified and quickly walked away. Other guests avoided eye contact and moved to different parts of the lobby. The hotel staff continued filming everything, laughing at the guests' discomfort as much as Alexander's humiliation. If you were a guest at this hotel and saw this happening, what would you do? Would you speak up or report it to management? Share this video if you think more people need to know about this kind of treatment. Alexander realized that this behavior wasn't just hurting him, it was creating a toxic environment that affected everyone who entered the hotel. As Alexander continued his degrading performance in the lobby, he noticed something that made his heart sink even more. This wasn't the first time the hotel staff had treated vulnerable people this way. He watched as an elderly man with a walking stick struggled to get help from the front desk. The staff ignored him because his clothes weren't expensive enough. When the old man asked for directions, they rolled their eyes and gave him wrong information on purpose. Alexander saw a young mother with 2 small children trying to ask about rates for a basic room. The staff looked at her worn-out clothes and immediately told her the hotel was fully booked, even though Alexander knew they had empty rooms. A man who spoke English with a foreign accent was treated rudely when he asked simple questions about hotel services. The staff mocked his pronunciation behind his back and deliberately gave him confusing answers. Alexander realized that the cruelty he was experiencing wasn't unusual for this hotel. The staff had developed a pattern of treating people badly based on how they looked, how much money they seemed to have, or where they came from. Sarah, the young housekeeper who had looked uncomfortable earlier, quietly approached Alexander when the other staff weren't watching. "I'm sorry about this," she whispered. This isn't right, but if I speak up, I'll lose my job. I have a family to feed." Her words broke Alexander's heart. Good people were trapped in this toxic environment, forced to watch cruelty happen because they were afraid of losing their income. The problem wasn't just cruel individuals. It was a system that punished kindness and rewarded cruelty. Alexander knew that when he revealed his identity, he would need to protect people like Sarah while holding the cruel employees accountable. After 2 hours of the most degrading treatment imaginable, Alexander had endured enough evidence gathering. His knees were bleeding from crawling on marble floors. His hands were dirty from picking up food scraps. His dignity had been attacked in every possible way. But Marcus wasn't finished. The hotel manager seemed to be enjoying the power trip so much that he kept thinking of new ways to humiliate his victim. "You know what would be really funny?" Marcus said to his staff. "Let's post these videos online. We could make this guy famous as the homeless man who begged at the Crown Palace Hotel. It would be hilarious." Several employees got excited about this idea. "We could put it on social media with funny captions," one said. "It would get millions of views." "Wait," said another employee. "We could make a whole series of videos. Every time a homeless person comes here, we film them begging and post it online. We could become internet famous." Alexander felt his anger reaching dangerous levels. These people were talking about destroying vulnerable people's lives for entertainment. They wanted to turn human suffering into social media content. But the final straw came when Marcus made an even more cruel suggestion. "Actually, let's call the police and tell them this man is disturbing our guests. We'll have him arrested for trespassing, and then we'll have video evidence of a homeless man being dragged away in handcuffs. That would be amazing content." This was the moment Alexander realized he had to act. These employees weren't just being cruel. They were planning to use the legal system to destroy innocent people for their own amusement. Alexander slowly stood up from the floor, his body aching from hours of humiliation. The hotel staff looked surprised because they expected him to keep begging. "Is there a problem?" Marcus asked with annoyance. "I didn't tell you to get up." Alexander reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "I need to make one phone call," he said quietly. Marcus laughed. "What are you going to do? Call your homeless friends to come beg with you?" Alexander dialed a number that every Crown Hotel executive knew by heart, the direct line to corporate security and legal affairs. The phone rang twice before a professional voice answered. "Crown Hotel Corporate Security. This is Director Johnson." "Johnson, this is Alexander Crown," he said in his normal, authoritative voice. "I need you to bring a full team to the Crown Palace Hotel immediately. I also need our legal department and human resources director here within the next 15 minutes. The hotel staff stopped laughing. Something in Alexander's voice had changed completely. He no longer sounded like a desperate homeless man. He sounded like someone with serious authority. "Sir, are you in danger?" Johnson asked with concern. "Should we contact local police?" "Bring the police too," Alexander said. "We're going to need them for multiple terminations and possible criminal charges. I've been undercover at this location for 2 hours, and what I've witnessed requires immediate legal action." Marcus and his staff were staring at Alexander with growing confusion and fear. The man who had been crawling on their floor minutes earlier was now speaking like a corporate executive. "Also, Johnson," Alexander continued, "I need you to secure all security camera footage from the last 3 hours. Make sure nothing gets deleted or damaged. This is going to be evidence in both internal investigations and potential lawsuits." "Understood, Mr. Crown. Full team is mobilizing now. We'll be there in 12 minutes. Alexander hung up the phone and looked directly at Marcus, who had gone completely white. "Mr. Crown?" Marcus whispered in disbelief. That's not possible. You're just a homeless man. We saw you begging on the floor." The other employees started looking at each other with growing panic. Some of them began frantically trying to delete the videos from their phones, but it was too late. Everything had been automatically backed up to cloud storage. If someone you trusted completely betrayed you like this, how would you feel? Have you ever discovered that people you thought you knew were actually cruel when they thought no one was watching? Tell us about your experience in the comments. Alexander smiled grimly as he watched the realization dawn on their faces. The phone call that would destroy their careers had been made, and there was no going back. Exactly 12 minutes later, the Crown Palace Hotel lobby filled with serious-looking people in business suits. Corporate security, legal affairs, human resources, and local police officers entered through the main entrance with purpose and authority. Marcus and his staff watched in growing terror as these official-looking people approached their group. Some employees tried to slip away quietly, but security guards blocked all exits. Director Johnson, a tall man with gray hair and sharp eyes, walked directly to Alexander. "Mr. Crown, are you injured? Do you need medical attention?" "I'm fine, Johnson," Alexander replied, his voice now carrying the full authority of his position. "But I need these people to understand exactly who they've been torturing for the past 2 hours." Alexander turned to face the terrified hotel staff. Marcus was shaking visibly, his face pale with shock and fear. "Allow me to introduce myself properly," Alexander said in a clear, powerful voice. "I am Alexander Crown, founder and CEO of Crown Luxury Hotels. I own this hotel, I own the entire chain, and I've just spent 2 hours watching you people treat human beings like animals for your entertainment." The silence in the lobby was complete. Marcus literally fell into a chair, his legs unable to support him anymore. Several employees started crying. Others stood frozen in shock, unable to process what they were hearing. "The man you forced to bark like a dog and crawl on his knees for food scraps owns this entire building," Alexander continued. "Every cruel word you said, every humiliating act you forced me to perform, every video you recorded, all of it was done to your ultimate boss." The security cameras had captured everything, and now corporate officials were reviewing the footage on tablets, documenting every policy violation and act of cruelty for legal proceedings. Alexander's response was swift and decisive. He looked at Marcus, who was still sitting in shock, and said, "Marcus Sterling, you are terminated immediately. Security will escort you from the premises, and you will never work for Crown Hotels again." Marcus tried to speak, but no words came out. 2 security guards approached him and professionally guided him toward the exit. "The following employees are also terminated effective immediately," Alexander announced, reading from a list that Johnson had prepared based on the security footage. He named every staff member who had participated in the humiliation, recorded videos, or placed bets on human suffering. Each person was escorted out by security while other hotel guests watched in amazement. The well-dressed corporate officials worked efficiently, documenting everything for legal purposes. "Some of you will face criminal charges for harassment and creating a hostile public environment," Alexander continued. "Your videos and betting activities have been preserved as evidence. Legal action will be pursued to the full extent of the law." The employees who were being fired looked absolutely devastated. Their careers in the hospitality industry were over. The videos they had recorded for entertainment had become evidence of their own cruelty. But Alexander wasn't finished. "This hotel will be temporarily closed for a complete staff overhaul and retraining program. Every policy will be reviewed, and new procedures will be implemented to ensure this never happens again." Alexander then turned his attention to the employees who had shown discomfort with the cruelty they witnessed. He called Sarah, the young housekeeper, to step forward. "Sarah," he said gently, "I noticed that you were uncomfortable with what was happening. You even apologized to me when you thought no one was looking. That shows character and compassion." Sarah was crying, but now from relief rather than fear. "You are promoted to housekeeping supervisor with an immediate salary increase," Alexander announced. "We need more people like you in leadership positions." Robert, the security guard who had looked ashamed of his colleague's behavior, was also promoted and given additional responsibilities for training new security staff in proper guest relations. "These are the kind of employees who represent what Crown Hotels should be," Alexander told the remaining staff. "They showed humanity when others showed cruelty. They will help us rebuild this location's reputation and culture. Have you ever been in a situation where you wanted to help someone but were afraid to speak up? Sometimes the smallest act of kindness can make the biggest difference. Subscribe to our channel to see more stories about people who chose compassion over cruelty. The changes at Crown Palace Hotel were immediate and comprehensive. Alexander announced new company-wide policies that would prevent this kind of behavior at all Crown Hotel locations. Every hotel will have mandatory sensitivity training for all staff, he declared. There will be anonymous reporting systems for guests and employees to report mistreatment. Most importantly, we will have regular undercover inspections to ensure these standards are maintained. Alexander also established a foundation to help homeless and struggling individuals, turning his painful experience into positive action for vulnerable people everywhere. The hotel's 5-star rating was temporarily suspended pending investigation, but Alexander was determined to earn it back through genuine excellence in treating all people with dignity. Luxury isn't just about expensive furniture and fine food, he said. True luxury is about treating every human being with respect and kindness, regardless of their appearance or circumstances. The Crown Palace Hotel would reopen in 3 months with a completely new staff trained in these values, setting a new standard for the entire hospitality industry. This story teaches us that how we treat others when we think no one important is watching reveals our true character. The hotel staff thought they were safe to be cruel because they believed their victim was powerless. Alexander Crown's phone call didn't just destroy careers. It exposed a culture of cruelty that had been hidden behind luxury and glamour. Sometimes it takes extreme measures to reveal extreme problems. Most importantly, this story shows us that everyone deserves dignity and respect, regardless of their circumstances. You never know who you're really talking to, and you never know when your actions might have consequences you never imagined. Like this video if it made you think about how you treat others, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Comment below and tell us about a time when you witnessed kindness or cruelty that changed your perspective on human nature.